Our guest speaker come up. Our speaker this evening probably has one of the most important positions in the city in this time, because it's all about money. The city has $6 billion it spends each year. About $1 billion of it is for police. And of course, you know what the other $5 billion is used for, right? Sure, you do know what the other $5 billion is used for. With $6 billion, waste and inefficiency comes with the territory, and that's why the city has an elected city controller, someone who's supposed to be independent, get to the bottom of both performance as well as abuse as well as fraud. And all of us here know our speaker this evening. She was for 8 years the council member for the area generally north of Ventura Boulevard, Sherman Oaks and north. So with that, I'd like to introduce Wendy Greuel, Los Angeles City Controller.
That will not be good. That street is a mess anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's usually moving trucks out there. There's people moving in, people moving out.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Good? Was the food good?
We'll see.
All right, Jules, then we won't blame you if it wasn't good. So, I am so happy to be here, and thank you, Richard, for that introduction. And it's nice to be back in my old hood, I guess I'd say, in the neighborhood. I do want to introduce a new person on my staff who has worked for City Council member Dennis Zine for many years and is now working for me. She took Nancy Hernandez's spot. Many of you who may have known Nancy before. But I want to introduce Marisol Espinosa, who's in the back. So wave your hand, Marisol. Welcome. She said to me, "Are there always this many people here?" And I said, "Oh yes, always at Soha, always at Soha."
We always tell our speakers, normally we have about 30 people. Because of you, all these people show up.
Right, I knew that. But I am happy to be here because Soha is one of those entities and organizations that continues to have people who attend and are advocates for our neighborhood and our community. So, you know, I have now been the city controller just a little over a year. People ask me, do you miss the city council? What do you think my answer is? No. Now, I did think I would, I have to say, and I miss the constituent stuff, and people think I'm crazy when I say that, but I do not miss sitting in council meetings Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and always having to get those 8 votes for everything that you necessarily need. This is a job, as Richard described it, that's independent. It is a job that allows me to not only take on some of the tough issues of waste, fraud, and abuse and be the taxpayer's advocate. It allows me to use the political to change public policy, which I think is so critically important. I do want to just quickly describe what the controller does. I know I've been here briefly before, told you just a little bit about it, but this is a job that really has 3 components to it. The first one is I am responsible for paying all the bills. Every vendor payment, every single payroll that happens, and 120 of my 170 employees actually are responsible for making sure the machines run on time, so to speak. And it's an important job because you want to make sure that your taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely, and that you have someone at the helm that is watching their P's and Q's, and most importantly, your dollars and cents. And I may have shared with you before that when I was first elected, and you hope, any elected official, or even president of an organization, you hope that early on you'll be able to demonstrate to people that you're going to be looking out for their dollar. And mine happened not in the first 6 months, but in the first 3 days. Many of you may recall, just a little over a year ago, there was the Michael Jackson funeral. And there was a lot of debate about who should pay for the police officers, how many, how do they negotiate, and so forth. My piece of that was small because what came to my desk the Monday night before was a bill for $50,000 for lunches for our first responders, police, fire, and Department of Transportation officers. Something that was important if they're going to be standing out there for 12 hours they need to be fed and have all the kinds of things they would need, the water and all of that. And so, but I looked at the bill, and when it looked for $50,000, and I said, how much is that per box lunch? And we figured out it was $14 per box lunch. You could have done it, he said he could do it for 12. Jules could have done it for 5, okay, just so you know. 3, okay.
0.
But we called Subway, C02, we called Subway because my staff goes, this seems a little weird. They could do it for $6.75, they said. Now, see, gotta get a little lower there. So we kind of questioned why would they have charged $14 per box lunch, and it wasn't that different. Then we looked at the bill, and my staff said, where is the 760 area code? Where's the 760, okay? Springs, okay, but it was, you know, now how many of you remember Jensen's Fine Foods? Some of you were old enough, we know, yeah. With Palm Springs, but it used to be in Los Angeles. But of course, only in Los Angeles will we, you know, push things out the door, so we're keeping them here. But lo and behold, what happened is we found out that they were making these 3,500 sandwiches in Wrightwood, California. Where Wrightwood is?
The mountain.
Top of that really windy road up near Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead. And so we questioned it, and unfortunately, when we got the bill, half of the sandwiches were on their way down the hill. We said, wait a minute. Number one, you should wait until we actually had approved all of this, but two, why did you do that? We have a 12.5% unemployment rate in the city of Los Angeles. We have businesses, some of you may represent, that could have done it, would have done it either for free, as Jules would, or Matt, who would have charged us, but not $14.
$6.50.
$6.50. Oh, if I stayed long enough.
The inside conversation, Matt owns the Vitello's restaurants, so people may not know that. Matt, what would you look with it? $6.50, okay.
Okay, and it's on the tape right here, right Howard? Okay, $6.50. But the bottom line was, and it became known as Lunchgate in the city of Los Angeles. And it was emblematic of saying, let's look at things differently. One, why wouldn't we have looked in the city of Los Angeles for a vendor that would have been available to us? And one that would have done it cheaper. And believe it or not, they were within policy, and I said, well, this policy needs to change. We need to have local preferences, and we need to make sure that we get the best amount for it. And we shouldn't wait until Monday at 3 o'clock to order the sandwiches for the next day and have them drive 80 miles. I said, what if it had been snowing? Okay, it was July, but what if it had been snowing? We would have had trouble. So I do that every single day. I look at things, many of which you will not hear about, that I question, I send back to the departments. So that's 120 of my 170. The next part of my office is financial reporting. And financial reporting means I'm the person who does that end of the year, where's the city, how much money do they have left in the bank, how much do they have in their reserve fund and their cash flow. But it's also the responsible entity to say, wait a minute, we have a little problem here. And you may remember last year we had a slight budget issue in the city of Los Angeles. I sent 8 letters during that year saying, we're spending more than we have, we need to look more quickly, and I like to use the same phrase, waiting to decide how you're going to cut your budget is not like good wine. It does not get better with time. It gets harder as you go forward. And so my job as a city controller throughout the year was to say, I'm concerned about our cash flow. I'm concerned that we are not going to have the revenue in April and May to be able to meet some of our financial obligations. And so I used the bully pulpit to remind them of that situation, and also said to them, I won't sign checks I don't have money for in the bank. And I particularly was concerned during the time in which the Department of Water and Power told us they would not be sending us the annual transfer, a portion of the annual transfer, which is about $73 million. And everyone said to me, oh, they'll send it, it'll be fine. Oh, the check's in the mail. Well, guess what? I don't write checks based on checks are in the mail. We have to have the money in the bank. And lo and behold, as you may recall last year, the debacle of mayor, council, DVP, back and forth, and we got to play chicken, and we didn't have the $73 million. And I had to send a letter, which became national news, that said, I potentially will not have enough money in my account, and I'll have to take from the reserve fund, not borrow from the reserve fund, just to meet the financial obligations of the city, and it may not be replenished by the end of the fiscal year to a point that will allow us to respond to any fiscal crisis. Matt, would you mind? I left my water over there. Would you mind? So, for me, that part of my job is very, very important. And when you look at our budget going forward in this next year, I have said that there are some very important pillars in my thoughts about how we make sure the city can stand tall. And I wrote an op-ed piece that talked about the 4 pillars. The first is get back to core services. And I know this community in particular. Core services, public safety, right? Public works, jobs, okay? Very, very important. But when we look at the budget every year, and we get the 7 different books about where we, how you're going to determine the budget, it doesn't show you, here's the Department of Recreation and Parks, here are the services that we provide, and here's how much each service costs, and how you would be able to determine what the priorities, what's the most important thing that we would do. I think that's important to do, to get back to the basics. The second pillar is, let's not have short-term solutions for long-term problems. Very, very important. I like to tell the story about the fact we have this piece of property called the mangrove property. And every year we've used it to balance the budget because we are going to sell it. We've sold it 3 times to balance the budget and we still own it. Okay? What that means is we every year said, okay, we're going to sell it for $35 million because we're short a little $35 million, and guess what? By the mid-year, we haven't sold it. It's not at the level we think it's going to be. So let's not look at short-term solutions for long-term problems. The third pillar of what I've talked about is making sure we have a reserve fund. Not a sexy issue, but it's like your savings account. You need to make sure you have it. And if we had not had that 5% reserve fund this last year, that goal, we would have had a situation where we would not have had enough money in the bank to pay the bills because of potential revenue changes, potential challenges that we would have, earthquake, fires, and floods, which we know happen in Los Angeles frequently. And very important to do that. And the fourth, of course, is to look at pension reform. How do we ensure that we don't bankrupt the city by having more than 50% of our budget be for pension reform, or excuse me, for pensions in the city of Los Angeles? By the year, I think that the number is 2014, 2015, potentially 50% of the budget could be based on having that be pension costs in the city of Los Angeles. So those are, to me, the 4 important pillars that we have. And I look at it, I think, the city and say, how are we going to look at the budget? How are we going to do things differently? And it's not easy. So the third part of my office is the audits. It's the part that you probably read about more. Often than not, you hear about things that we're doing in the city of Los Angeles. I have done 26 audits in my first year. We are a very mean and mighty group of people, small. We have 15 auditors. The industry standard is that you have 6 for every $1 billion in your budget. If that was the case, if we were meeting those standards, we would have 42 auditors just for the regular city departments. And if we added the proprietary departments that I'm responsible for, that would be almost 120. And so we have to do a lot more with less in the city. I want to tell you about we've done about 26 audits, and we've identified about $322 million that the city could be collecting or has lost due to waste, fraud, and abuse, and that we need to change that. Now, these audits, I want to make sure that we don't just have them out on the shelf. And we did a study from when Laura was there. We looked at from 2004 to 2009. And we looked at how many of the audits had been heard by the city council and how many had not been heard by the city council. 46% of the audits had never, ever been heard by the city council. 46%. Wow. And we spent all that money and time on an audit. And so you'll see in each of my audits the controller's accountability plan. And it shows, if you go on my website, and it's evolving as we're trying to make it even better, but it shows, here's an audit we did, here's a recommendation that we did, and how have we actually implemented that, and have the mayor, the council, and the city attorney, and the controller even responded to that, so that you as the constituents can come after us and say what we've done and not done.